Thank you guys for sticking out to hear me. My name's Jeremy. I'm with Juniper Networks, but I am not here to sell you anything. I was invited to talk about what we are doing with Puppet, but more importantly, what I think the networking industry as a whole is going through, and share with you some of the stories that I've been seeing. So there will be some Puppet stuff in here, and there will be some other stuff about other things that I see in the industry as a whole. A few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I was at Puppet Camp in San Francisco, and I got to see Will present something. Props to Will. And he threw out this word, frictionless IT automation. So I have forked its use and called it my own. And now when I talk to sales guys and my sales engineers in networking, I teach them to use this term. So the word is spreading so that we talk about frictionless IT automation. And so I'm going to tell you really not only the story of Juniper and Puppet, but the story about IT automation in a broader sense with networking. And my story actually begins with somebody else's story. As most good stories happen, they just kind of flow from one to the other. And so this story is called The Oracle and the Sherpa. And a good friend of mine who is the Oracle and was describing kind of the state of where we are in networking in terms of automation. He said, imagine, if you will, this giant mountain. And on the top of the mountain are the oracles. And the oracles can look down on the other side of the mountain, and they see this beautiful valley. And in this valley, there are everything you could possibly want if you're networking. They've got commodity hardware, and programmability, and virtualization, and partners that could integrate complex hardware with OpenFlow and SDN, whatever that might mean. And in this valley, there are tribes of network engineers that could also write programs, and they could take advantage of APIs. It sounds like a wonderful place, and we have all these thought leaders at the top of the mountain talking about this place that they call the Valley of SDN. Perhaps you've heard of it. We've never seen it, but it exists, they tell us. And so on the other side of the mountain is the rest of us, right? Because we're trapped on this other side of the mountain. And he's drawing this on the whiteboard as he's describing, and he says, our industry is really kind of in this forest on the other side of the mountain. And he drew this forest, and he's not very artistic, and his trees look like broccoli. He said, we're wandering around this dark forest of broccoli despair. And that's where we are. And in this forest are our networking friends. Anybody in networking here? Okay, small showing, right? So the tribe of networking lives in the dark forest of broccoli despair. And they are sitting in their huts, and they're artisanally crafting their VLANs on switches and routes and load balancing controls, and they're very happy doing this, but there's a lot of people who have been hearing about all these great things that are happening in IT, and as virtualization has exploded for the servers and apps and all the wonderful things that are happening, people have started to hear about this mountain and this valley of SDN, and the thought leaders in IT are getting really excited about it, although people still don't know what it means. And so they're starting to say to the people down in this forest, you guys need to start going up the mountain, get on the other side. There's a lot of people in networking that don't want to leave the forest. They like it there. And there's a lot of people that really do want to move into this new age of automation. And what my friend, who's the Oracle, said, what we really need are Sherpas. People who can talk to these networking people and help guide them, maybe not over the mountain, but just try to get them out of the forest. Maybe make some baby steps along the way. Maybe get them to the foot of the mountain and show them that the mountain isn't really that scary. Maybe there's a goat path. So, and I said, all right, well, that sounds like a really good idea. We need those people, and how do we do that? And he said, well, you need people who understand networking, and you need people who understand coding, and you need to have people that understand workflow integration at a higher level, and you need people that can evangelize this. I'm like, where do these people exist? Because even the Sherpas don't exist. And he said, well, yeah, that sounds pretty tough. And I said, I'm going to do that. So I've decided that that's what I do. I'm a Sherpa. Right? That's my role. I changed what I do at Juniper. I actually invented a job at Juniper at the beginning of 2012. and this is what I do. And so the rest of this is kind of my story of what happened in 2012 and how we got with what we're doing with Puppet. So to really shape the conversation, I get to talk with a lot of thought leaders, not only in networking, but vice presidents and directors that really try to manage large-scale IT problems. Now, I don't know if you guys are the owners of the big, all of IT, or if you're just in the server app side of the world, or if you do both, but the people who drive the business, who own the budget, who make the decisions, they care about three basic things, really, when you boil it right down. They care about lowering costs, right? Everybody, they're cost conscious. Something pretty obvious. You know, people think, oh, if I automate things, I can get rid of people. That's really not true. I hope you guys don't think that. If you embrace Puppet and automation, you're going to be getting rid of jobs. I think the server guys and the IT guys have already gotten past that mind hurdle, but in networking, those people who are, you know, handcrafting VLANs, they're afraid of automation. But the VPs, they know that there's a cost associated to do the work, but more importantly, they know that there's a cost of making a mistake. And in networking, making mistakes are very expensive. If you're a service provider, where your network is your revenue, right, you lose money, right? If you're an enterprise whose network is critical to your business, say you're a content service provider, mistakes cost you millions of dollars when the network is down. And if you're an enterprise customer, the network may not be a critical liability to your business, but it is congruent to your business. So if you're like somebody like the Home Depot or Payless Shoe Store, you know, your network is important to your business. So anytime you can de-risk anything that happens in IT, your CIO cares. And more importantly, as long as you're not making mistakes and you automate these things, your goodput increases. So I can turn up customers faster, I can turn up stores faster, I can sell more content faster. These are the benefits of automation in terms of lowering costs, or maybe you can look at that as increasing revenue. Reducing risk, again, should be obvious. When you manually do things with complex systems, they're very fragile, right? And so maybe you guys get this because you're already embracing this DevOps mindset. But in networking, they don't have this mindset. The VP that owns it all, if he's looking at you guys as the leaders in IT, he already knows this. But when we're talking to the director of networking, they don't get really this. They think that if they touch every single command, that they're de-risking the network. They honestly believe that. You know, every config is a unique snowflake that they must touch. Or they might destroy the network, which is a mindset and a cultural problem that we have in networking. And finally, what your CIOs care about is really improving service, because the end goal here is that IT serves the business. Right? Whether you're a university system and you serve the colleges that use your network, or you're the infrastructure that serves something like iTunes, it doesn't matter. You're a commodity or you're a utility that runs the business. Right? So in networking, we look at the server guys and the app guys as kind of, you guys have it together. Right? You already have these mystical and magical tools that we don't even know about, right? And we're inventing our own technology to solve the problems that you have already solved. Some of those times they call that SDN or, you know, automation. You know, networking guys kind of think that the only way to solve networking problems is worth more networking. We'll invent some new protocol, or we'll sell you a tool, but that tool is really vendor specific. That doesn't really help. So, you know, what I do is I'm trying to get the networking automation to level up to where IT automation is. Does that mean that networking engineers are going to wake up and start writing code? Maybe, probably not in any near term. But I'll try to help the people that want to do that. Does it mean that there's IT professionals that either don't have networking engineers, or they're just tired of their networking engineers and they want to do basic things with the network and automate their functions, and we train DevOps people to start consuming network automation skills? Yeah, I think that's kind of the future, honestly, in a lot of customers, and specifically in the enterprise space. We see this happening with things like, I don't know, has anybody heard of Nicira and VMware or overlay networks? Why did that happen? Oh, the app guys got sick and tired of the networking guys. Screw you, we'll make our own overlay system. We'll manage it ourselves, just give us fat pipes and we'll handle it because you guys take too long to set up a VLAN. I mean, retarded. So, but that's the state of being. And it really, I think, put a kick in the pants in the networking vendor's mind that, wow, change is afoot. And we need to get with the program. So, when I talk to people, and I talk to the folks, how they view value in IT, this is kind of how that happens. When you're the CIO or you own the responsibility, value in IT is a function of how well your systems are automated so that you can deliver value to the business. And so I follow kind of the history of DevOps, right? It started with writing shell programs or bash, those were ad hoc scripts to automate some processes. You move up the stack and you do nodal-based automation, so things like Puppet and Chef do this very well. That's kind of their sweet spot now, right? The evolution of that is then we get into IT automation where you're doing multi-nodal orchestration, right? And I think the guys at Puppet were talking about people contributing modules to even look after that problem. So this area right here, IT workflow orchestration, you've heard of OpenStack and things like that. That's where a lot of attention is occurring because that's where you get workflow happening, meaning I need to touch multiple things in a particular order, and in some cases have it self-service. And that's why you see so much attention around OpenStack and Open Daylight. Everybody's having a free-for-all because this space is really underserved, right? This space is pretty well served. I mean, Puppet's doing a great job, Chef is doing a great job. There's other technologies that are doing a great job. And then as you move even up further up the stack, you get into business workflow orchestration, and that's where you get into things that are outside of even IT, right? So perhaps if you're the Home Depot and you're building a new store, that workflow process begins with, let's find a site to build a new store, right? And at some point, IT rolls into that process. So he thinks this stack up here is his top of mind. And when you look at the networking guys, or how this man perceives the value of networking, the individuals in that organization, it's how well those people have been trained on mastering a vendor's CLI, whether it's Cisco or Juniper. They go to these trainings, they get these certifications, right? And that's how this guy sees those people. He values an expert because it means that when there's a problem or they need to do something, somebody can manually do that really fast or with low risk, right? Provide his IT organization a better service. But they're not trained to be programmers. They're not trained in the mindset of DevOps. They don't think about these things. And by and large, they fear it because they think it eliminates their job. And part of what I have to do is kind of get them off the ledge so they understand that it's not that way. Much like I don't think any of you guys are running around thinking, wow, if I automate my IT infrastructure automation, I'm going to get fired. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Would you agree? That the more you automate, the more you create value to your organizations, the more sticky you are as an individual to that organization. But these guys haven't gotten that. They like to do things artisanally. What we've seen then is how do we create an intersection point between this amount of information and technology and these types of systems. Because if we can make network automation consumable, either to the networking people or the IT guys, then we're starting to move a little bit out of that forest and towards the mountain. Does that make sense? So, Will used this term frictionless IT automation, and so I started using it, and they asked me, well, what does frictionless mean? But to understand what frictionless means, you have to understand what friction means, right? So imagine you're some content service provider and you make some really big application that serves content, and your DevOps guys are rolling out I Sell Movies 1.0, and they do that with Puppet, and they've got YAML, and it's all data-driven, and it's magical, and they check things out, and they version control their infrastructure. These concepts just kind of blew my mind. I used to be a software programmer for like 12 years before I joined kind of the dark side of sales. And they're using concepts that was in my DNA, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that IT guys thought this way. So when they wanted to roll out I Sell Movies to You 2.0, they simply check in some YAML files and magic happens and 10,000 servers become what they need to be. But when, say, that database server needs a new VLAN, it breaks down. You have this division. There's a process that they follow where friction occurs, and then the networking guys have to do what they need to do, and maybe they've got some tools that they built, maybe they're at the ad hoc stage, but it's broken because there's not a flow-through seamless process. It's not frictionless. And when we talk to some of the biggest content service providers that we know, and we were trying to sell them switching, top-of-rack switching, for these huge data centers, they told us to pound sand. They said, Juniper, we don't care about the switch. It's just a switch, right? It has no value to me. Because the person who was making that buying decision was that VP who owned all of IT. He said, your switch is just like any other switch. It's got 1 gig and 10 gig and, don't care. Right? And that makes the sales guys very sad. They're sad pandas when you tell them they don't matter. And so we basically asked this VP, we're like, well, what can we do to make our switches matter to you? And he said, well, they have to matter to our application guys because that's what drives our business. And we said, well, what does that mean? He goes, you figure it out. He was not a gentleman. So we did. I mean, but the sales guys, they're not equipped to have that conversation. They can say, well, how much Ethernet do you buy? But they really don't, they can't talk to the server guys or the application guys. So they brought me in and I started to unravel their workflow. And at the core of it, they used Puppet to do all of their infrastructure servers. And they said, can you put Puppet on your switch? And I said, what's Puppet? I mean, seriously, I don't know. So this is what they want. They wanted the ability to carve out, if you will, just some functionality that they could control, that the networking guys would allow them to control, so that they would have this frictionless experience, and when they roll out I Sell Movies to You 2.0, and these VLANs had to occur, they could actually have these class template definitions, and all of those VLANs would be magically put onto the network when they needed it. And then if they had to roll back to I Sell You Movies 1.0, they could do that, because before they couldn't even do that. That was a broken process. So, so that's where we got into Puppet, and I didn't know what it was, even though I was a software guy and I understand these types of things. So I talked to our own IT staff at Juniper. Turns out we use Puppet, and they explained to me what Puppet was. Because when somebody says, oh, it's a configuration management tool, I'm like, we've been doing that for 10 years. As a plugin, yeah, I got to write some scripts, whatever. But they showed me what they were doing with it and how they were using it. And then I met with a bunch of other really big companies that were using Puppet to manage very large data center deployments. And my face melted on what they were doing with Hyra and external node classifiers and doing infrastructure as code. It just blew me away, and it really changed the way I started to think about solving problems. And I stopped being a networking guy. At that point, I just stopped being a networking guy. I sit in Juniper's house, but I am no longer a networking guy. I'm trying to be part of DevOps. I'm a DevOps guy in network. And so you guys know about Puppet, so I don't have to tell you about Puppet. But what really put the light bulb on in my head was this concept of what versus how, right? In Puppet, we describe what we want, now how we do it. And that was a really kind of mind-altering experience for somebody in networking to describe in an abstract way what you want. And in Juniper, we sell switches and firewalls and routers, and even though it's the same operating system, the configurations on some of our products are different. So if I wanted to put a VLAN on a top-of-rack switch or a core router, it's actually different configurations because they were built by different business units. Go figure. But now I can have one way to represent a VLAN, and regardless of the type of box that it's being deployed on, it happens. Because they're just describing what they want. And I'll show you a little example of what that kind of looks like. You've got a feel for it. This other thing down here, this enforcement, the concept of idempotency was, again, kind of makes you think of a little blue pill, but it's not. It's kind of a weird word. I say it wrong. And people really had a hard time getting their head around this. Like, what does this do and how does this work? And once we grasped how that works, it really opened up our eyes to the power of these types of frameworks, because it could make automation consumable. And it could make automation consumable, not just for the networking guys, but for the IT guys, and for the DevOps guys. Because if I want to engage a group of people about writing automation, do I go to the DevOps guys and teach them a little bit of networking and make it consumable? Or do I go to the networking guys and try to teach them how to write code? I'll do both, but I think I know who wins. So what did we do? At Juniper, we were told by our customers, by the IT organization, not the networking guys, because they didn't know what public was anyway. They said, we want you to give us the resource types so that we can model the abstractions that we need, and we don't want you to crap it up. Right? Don't put Juniper on it. Right? I mean, for the basic things, a VLAN is a VLAN, and a port is a port. I mean, don't make Juniper this, or HP this, or Cisco this, or Extreme this. A VLAN is a VLAN. Don't crap it up. And more importantly, and this was key, is make your switch appear like any other node in a Puppet managed infrastructure. So that when somebody at GitHub does magic with all the stuff that we'll talk about that I don't understand, it will just work too, right? And that's a very powerful concept, because if you break a framework, if you try to elbow your way into a framework, then you lose the benefit of the community and the apps and the platform. So we really had to figure out, what does that mean? And they said, well, you have to have an agent on your box, and it has to have factor, and it has to have a Ruby environment. And if you're talking to networking people, specifically, some traditional networking people, that's not an option, right? It turned out that it was an option for Juniper, so I'll show you that. But this was our philosophical mindset, right? This is where we started from. We didn't try to do it with crap Juniper all over it. We did it what we thought would be the DevOps way. So we started with 4 basic resource types. This is it. I mean, this is all we did, right? We said a VLAN, an interface, a switch port or a layer 2 interface, and a link aggregation group that you could bundle multiple physical ports together to create a logical type. And we did it in a way, and this is just a short example, that shows you how one might define some VLANs on a box and apply those VLANs to a port. And honestly, the only thing that's specific to Juniper here is really the way we name our interfaces, and as you all know, that kind of thing can be abstracted in parameterized classes or variable things. It turns out that another networking vendor who's also very engaged in the Puppet community saw what we were doing and said, we want in on that. We want to work with you on that, which is really a mind-blowing thing for us in the networking industry. Usually, everything is about how do we differentiate, because that's what sales guys do. Said, oh, if I can differentiate, that means I can beat my opponent, I can sell more stuff. And I think there's a place for differentiation, and I think there's a place where you don't need that, where actually having a commonality is really what you want. So there's another networking vendor. I was hoping he was going to show up here today and chat with me, but he couldn't make it. But there is another networking vendor out there, and since we started this kind of quasi-call about it, I've had 3 or 4 other networking vendors approach me and say, we would like to do this too, can you help us? And I said, yes, I will help you. I mean, I won't write the code for you, but I will kind of show you what we did and how it was done and help the networking community as a whole embrace things like Puppet. And so that's what we're doing. So in order to kind of engage the community, we tried to do this in a community way. We put everything out in the open source. It's all hosted by Puppet Labs. The modules are in Puppet Forge. We've got a community support forum dedicated for Junos and Puppet, which is not to say we're going to support Puppet questions, but as they pertain to Juniper, or people are always saying, hey, what about this, and can I have this, and can you make this other thing for Juniper? We gave them a place to have a community. And we made it essentially BSD style free, right? There's no cost to this, and it's a BSD style license. It's there today. So if you have Juniper products, in your shop today, switching, EXs, QFXs, MXs, you can use this right now. There's nothing stopping you right now. So how did we do this? Junos as an operating system, which runs on all of our products, is based on the FreeBSD operating system. And so we actually have a whole team of guys that work with FreeSB, contribute back to FreeSB. We actually are a very active community member of FreeBSD. But what also makes Juniper very unique is that inside of our operating system is a complete and comprehensive XML API. We've had this for over a decade. And this is how service providers manage our equipment en masse, right? Like the Verizons of the world and the British Telecoms of the world. Every function, every bit of configuration, every operational command is exposed through an XML API that is built just as part of our engineering process. We don't have to do anything more, right? So when our engineers build some new config or some new operational command, the XML just comes with it. There's no additional package you have to install. There is no waiting for this function to be automatable. That's the word. It just comes with the operating system. Now, it has not been consumable, right? I can go to a bunch of networking engineers and say, we've got this XML API. Write some code. And that's like telling me to go to the Home Depot and build a house. Sure, all the bits and pieces are there, but I would not want to live in that house. And my management, my wife, would not allow us to live in that house. And that's why we don't see a lot of automation in networking, because there's a lot of fear about, scripts gone wild. Scripts gone wild. So that's why I think that the discipline and experience and track record of DevOps is a very attractive place for networking. So we just need to make it consumable. Junos also has the ability to load third-party packages into the operating system. So you can think of this as Yum or apt-get. We have this capability. We have a set of cross-compilers and tools that allow us to do this and sign them so that they are secure. But by and large, nobody was using them because nobody really knew what to do with them. But we had this technology. So we decided to just use our own, eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne. And cross-compiled Ruby, took the Puppet agent off the internet, compiled in the Ruby gems, and simply created this package. So you can easily and even automate the process of installing this package onto your network. And then combine that with the NetDev modules that you stick on the Puppet Master. Now your network can sync to your Puppet Master, download the modules that it needs, and now you can essentially own the network. So that's what we did. Any questions about that? Did you guys even know? Yes? So you've got something that you can map a set of desires to a set of physical hardware. How do you close the loop to say, hi, I'm out of resources? What do you mean by out of resources? Well, say you don't have enough VLANs available in the data center to support the desired differentiation of the services. Okay, I understand. So another thing that makes kind of Junos different a little bit is we have what's called a configuration commit model. And you can think of it like a database, right? You open up a transaction to a database, you apply a number of changes, and then you say, I want to commit this, all of these things together. And when you do that step, Junos will actually do a check to see if that's allowable, so to speak. And if it's not, it'll say, here are the errors, here are the mistakes that you've made, you've tried to use too many VLANs, you used a VLAN like VLAN 20 million, which is invalid, whatever. And then those changes will not get applied. So when we do a Puppet run and the agent runs on the box, we actually go through that entire process, that commit check. We actually go through this as an exclusive lock scenario to prevent mutex problems. And then all of the logs are actually stored in or as part of the Puppet report. So it's all structured in YAML. We've got a source tag that says Junos. It has all of the report information. It can be filtered and extracted by your report tooling. So you know exactly not only what people tried to do, but the net effect. It'll give you the patch difference of the actual config. It will tie that config change to the catalog version number, so there's complete accountability through it. And all of the facts that are stored or provided by Junos can be modeled and extracted through PuppetDB if you're using it. So there are some specific Junos facts that we created to help in this process. And then you can actually have your own facts that will allow you to do some really amazing things that people have asked, well, can you do this or this and this? And now, because this is an XML API, And you can expose anything, right? Just because we only did 4 resource types, you can model anything. I mean, you can configure anything. It's just a function of doing it. And I teach people how to do it, but somebody has to do it, right? You don't want to be beholden to Juniper for these resources, and you're not. You know, somebody with enough time and energy or desire that wants to write their own resources to model whatever configs that they want to manage on their network can do that. And that is part of the DevOps philosophy. At least that's what they told me. It has to be open and unconstrained. So we've done that, or which we hope we've done. You know, we've been working with Puppet Labs on this for a while. I live in 2 worlds. Most of the time I'm in the field talking with customers and talking about workflow and helping the sales guys. But the other half of my brain lives in the engineering side of the house. I have a small team of software developers and QA guys and virtual teams and all that crap. So we've been doing this for a while, and Puppet Labs has hosted all of our stuff on their website, so you can go there. They've got a solution page, links to download everything. So that's kind of the one place to go, and then from there you can get everywhere. And I want to this is the last slide really. I want to leave you with this because this is really where the power of Juniper and Junos applies. We have this data structure API, and it's done over an SSH subchannel. So we're not going to the CLI, we're not screen scraping with like somebody said earlier, structured data beats YAC and SET or awk or whatever. It's true if you know how to consume programming. If you know how to consume an API, every time I show this to somebody who's a programmer, they're like, oh my god, I can do anything, really? I can like automate anything I want with Junos? That's awesome. Networking guys are like, oh, what? So it's secure and connection oriented, right? So it's over an encrypted channel. It uses the same SSH credential mechanism that you're already familiar with because we're FreeBSD. Junos has a very sophisticated class structuring system, meaning you can very specifically say this user class can only touch this section of the configuration. They can only do these types of commands. You can get very granular. This is very important when we were talking to the networking guys and they said, do we want to let somebody else touch our magical snowflake infrastructure? And we had to guarantee that a Puppet run would not step on OSPF or BGP or all the mystical protocols that they know. We can do this. It's been in our operating system for a very long time. So you understand the concept of the structured, the user class privilege thing you understand. Comprehensive and consistent is also a key differentiator for us because this XML API doesn't change once we bake it, right? The CLI might change, but the XML data does not change, right? We'll add to it perhaps, but we don't move things around on you. That would break, say, Verizon, and they pay us a lot of money to not do things like that. So that's kind of the state of what we're doing and where we're at. I've left some time for some questions. And if you want to know other things that we're doing or some of the projects that we're doing with other customers, I'm happy to field some of those questions as well. So that was, I think, the last slide. Yeah?
Do you have a Tickle library?
Do I have a Tickle library?
XML, you listed a bunch of them on there. Is there a Tickle one available?
If there is, I don't know, which doesn't mean that there isn't. Most of the people that we talk to that are doing network programming are very focused on Python. Much about because the framework OpenStack is Python based. And there are other vendors out there that are delivering Python natively on the box, which is something that we're also going to be doing. Ruby obviously is very prevalent in frameworks like Puppet. And it is also really great because if somebody wants to throw up their own custom GUI and do something with Rails, now it's like super easy to automate network equipment. I honestly haven't gotten a lot of interest on the Tickle side of the house, but if Tickle can support SSH and XML, with a little bit, with spending like an hour with you, you would know enough to use Tickle to automate Junos. It's not that hard. Yeah?
You guys have extra support for MX and SRX?
So we already have the MX. That's already supported in the sense that the functionality that you see here is supported. The SRX, everybody wants support for the SRX. And so the good news is that it can be done, right? Because it's running Junos. The challenge on the SRX side of our house is we need to engage with our own business unit to do the testing, right? So we're not asking our own business unit to write Puppet modules or anything like that, but they have to at least do some qualification of what we provide so that we're not putting out crap. And those resources at Juniper are pretty tight, right? Because we have a lot of activity, shall we say, with our firewall products. It does not prevent us from, say, outsourcing that to a third party. So if we are collecting, we'll call it the gravity of momentum around the need around the SRXs. And once we have enough gravity, and we either pressure the BU to do it, or we outsource it. It's that simple. But I have it running in my lab. I know that it's technically feasible.
Do you have actually resources for the MX yet?
For the MX? Oh yeah, they're totally on board. Cool. Yeah, the MX guys. So what's funny is that the EX our EX is our product line for switching, and the QFX is our data center fabric switch. And so that's a separate business unit from our MXs, which are our call it routing, kind of an enterprise or service provider routing product, kind of our flagship, if you will. And when the MX guys heard about what we were doing with Puppet, they're like, well, we want in. And I'm like, all right, we have to pony up some resources. And they're like, no problem. Right? They were just like, here's some hardware, I'll give you 4 guys, Bob's your uncle. They were all over it. Yeah. Because what we see, actually, is a lot of customers, they've already made their decision about top of rack, which may or may not be Juniper. Because again, our value differentiation from a physical piece of hardware is, marginal. I think, doing a little self-introspection there. I mean, I love Junis and I love our products, but, switch is a switch. But in the data center, in the core, we have our MX that does very sophisticated routing and MPLS and BGP, all the things that they need. We actually see kind of a blending of, it might be Cisco top of rack, but Juniper in the core, or somebody else at the top of rack, like Arista, and then Juniper in the core. Customers want an endless or seamless or frictionless environment, even in networking, so they can say, I want a VLAN and use that same Puppet config to both put it on Arista and put it on Juniper. So I don't know about every vendor out there, but those that want to participate in this activity that we call NetDev, we engage with them to help them in that process.
You mentioned one other vendor that did step up. Are you allowed to name that one?
Yeah, it's Arista. I mean, their stuff is online. Yeah, and they've got a pretty cool operating system that is essentially Linux-based, so it's very easy for them to engage in these types of frameworks. So turns out that the individual who is kind of me is also here in Raleigh, so it's very easy for us to collaborate and not tell our bosses. Right now, some of our bosses are kind of freaking out about it. But it's for the greater good. We believe that, so thanks for asking. I was hoping, his name's Peter, I was hoping he'd be here. But, when you're one of us, we're like unicorns in the valley of SDN, right?
Which release was this supposed to be? And second question, do you charge for this additional feature?
Well, the question was, what version of Junis do you need to do this, and does it cost anything? I'll answer the second question first. It doesn't cost anything from us. Right? Juniper doesn't charge for this. We are moving in a direction that will support Puppet Enterprise, and so of course you would engage with Puppet for those types of things, but naturally that would be with an engagement with Puppet directly. We're not going to insert ourselves into all that. In terms of the release, we modeled it on the latest release of what's called Junis 12.3, I think 12.3 R2. And we did that for a couple of reasons. That would give us the broadest portfolio of support. So because the packaging system requires this, I can load a package onto a box, our switches didn't have that capability until the 12th release, in fact. Even though the MXs have had that for a very long time. Our smallest switch, which is called our EX2200, which you would use for, say, enterprise wiring closet switches, they get that support in 13.2, which is just now in beta. So the idea is that our complete product line for all switches and all of our MXs will be supported with Puppet. SRXs, we're trying to get, enough momentum to make that happen. Technically, there's nothing preventing us. It's just a function of form body. Thank you. Any other questions? How many people use Juniper right now? How many people want to use Juniper now that you know what we can do? How many people would like a programming workshop, in this area? I'll teach it if people show up, right? So you can hit me up. I don't have business cards because I keep changing my title. Keeps everybody on the tip. But my email address is jschulman, schulman @juniper.net. I'll probably throw out something on Triangle DevOps if you guys follow that on Meetup. I do want to schedule kind of like a maybe half-day programming XML with Junos or something. We've got virtual what we call a virtual firewall called we call it the Firefly. So we could use that as a programming environment, so you don't need any hardware, and I don't have to schlep all my hardware out, so we can do that. And also, we're also creating a bunch of Ruby gems right now that make networking consumable to non-networking people. So you don't need to know all the Junos XML bits and pieces. We model it actually as providers and types, that are data structures. So it's very easy. If you find me on GitHub, Jeremy Coleman on GitHub, you'll see those repositories. I try to document them fairly well. They're actually being system tested by our development team, so they'll be kind of quasi-supported, but community engaged. All right. Well, I guess that's my chat, and appreciate y'all listening.